That morning felt like every other miserable morning for Brianna. Bent over a huge heap of dirty clothes, her hands were soaked and wrinkled from the cold water. She was washing clothes like a housemaid in her own father's house. But today was different. Very different. Welcome to Innocent Stories, where we unravel tales of triumph and truth that'll grip your heart. As she scrubbed, her ears caught voices coming from inside the house. She leaned in, trying not to make a sound. It was her stepmother, Madame Angelina, speaking to a tall, scary-looking man in dark glasses. He looked like someone who had never smiled in his life. "That girl is a curse," Madame Angelina hissed. "She's a thorn in my flesh, always walking around with that innocent face, fooling everyone. In school, she's the one to receive awards every now and then. In the neighborhood, everyone wants to be her friend, while my own daughter, the beauty queen, is always treated as nobody. I'm telling you, she's blocking my daughter's destiny." Just then, Valeria, her daughter, stormed in, eyes red like she had been crying since yesterday. "Mom," Valeria wailed, before Mom stopped her from going to school. The principal always announced her name on the assembly as the face of the school. "She made me live in her shadow. No one even knew we shared the same surname. No one talks about me in school. They don't even talk about my beauty. She's always in the spotlight. Mom, I'm losing my mind. Can you believe a stepmother could be so cruel?" Stay tuned with Innocent Stories to find out how this twisted tale unfolds. Madame Angelina didn't flinch. She didn't blink. In fact, she smiled like a devil who just won a jackpot. "Don't worry, my daughter," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Just relax. I'm sending her exactly where she belongs today, a place where no one will ever see her face again." Just then, her phone buzzed. Ping. She picked it up and grinned. "Ah, the alert has entered," she said, laughing like someone possessed. "You can take her now. Do anything you want with her. Marry her. Use her. I don't care. Just make sure she never comes near this town again." Brianna's heart froze. Did she hear right? Before she could move, she heard her name. "Brianna!" Madame Angelina barked. She came out, her legs weak, hands still dripping from the soapy water. "You're going with this man." "No questions," Madame Angelina said with a fake smile. "He just bought you. Sorry, I mean paid handsomely for you. From now on, he's your husband or your boss, whichever one helps you sleep at night." Brianna's mouth fell open. "Ma, what did I do? Please." "Oh, stop the drama," Madame Angelina scoffed. "You've been acting like a princess for too long. It's time you learned your true position." The man didn't wait. He grabbed Brianna's hand like she was luggage, yanked her toward the door, and shoved her into a black SUV. She screamed, she cried, she begged, but no one came. As the car drove off at full speed, Brianna looked back through the window and saw Madame Angelina waving with a wicked grin. She wasn't just sending her away. She was erasing her. The road felt like forever. Brianna sat silently in the passenger seat, her eyes fixed on the endless stretch of trees and empty land speeding past the window. Tears traced silent paths down her cheeks, but she didn't bother wiping them anymore. What was the point? The man, cold, tall, and built like a brick wall, was driving with one hand and munching on snacks with the other. The crunching sound filled the air, the only thing breaking the heavy silence. He didn't look at her once, not a glance, not even a side eye, just the road. As if she wasn't even human. At some point, her stomach growled loudly, but he didn't ask if she was hungry. He didn't offer her even a crumb. In fact, he opened a cold bottle of drink, sipped it slowly, and let out a satisfied sigh like he was on a joy ride, not kidnapping a girl. She sat there, hands folded tightly on her lap, her mind running wild. Where was he taking her? Was he going to kill her? Sell her again? Or something worse? They drove through the night. Darkness swallowed the road, but the man didn't stop. Not even for rest, not for fuel, not for anything. He just kept driving like a robot on a mission. Then came the sunrise. Another day, same nightmare. Brianna hadn't slept. Her eyes were heavy, her body numb. She was too scared to even ask questions. What if asking annoyed him? Finally, after what felt like 100 years on the road, the car slowed down, and then she saw it. Her mouth fell open in shock. A massive gate stood before them. Not just big, huge, taller than any building she had ever entered in her life. The kind of gate you see in movies, guarding the homes of kings, drug lords, or monsters. With a slow creak, the gate opened from the inside. Brianna's heart thudded harder. The man didn't say a word. He simply drove in. The air inside the compound felt heavier, different, like something lived here that didn't like light. As the gate closed behind them with a loud clang, Brianna knew deep in her soul this was the beginning of something she was not ready for. A new life? No, a new battle. The compound was quiet. Too quiet. The man stepped out of the car and slammed the door without a word. Brianna followed, shaking like a leaf. Her legs felt weak, but fear pushed her forward. She didn't know what would happen if she stayed in that car. The house before her was huge, but it didn't feel like a home. It felt like a prison in disguise. Tall walls, windows covered with thick iron bars. Guards stood at every corner with blank, cold faces like they were made of stone. Still silent, the man led her inside. The inside was worse. Dark, cold, lifeless. Expensive things were everywhere, but nothing felt warm. It felt like a museum where no one was allowed to touch or smile. From now on, the man finally spoke, his voice deep and sharp like a knife. You work here. You sleep in the servant quarters. You eat what's left, if there's anything. You speak when spoken to, and you'll clean every single corner of this place with your hands. Brianna's heart sank. But I was told, her voice broke. You're my husband or boss? He turned to her, laughed coldly, and said, Husband? No, sweetheart. I own you. That's different. Her stomach turned. From that day, the torture began. She was woken up at 4 a.m. by the housekeeper, a cruel woman with a face like a dried pepper. Move, she shouted, throwing dirty clothes at her. You think this is your father's house? Lazy girl. Brianna scrubbed floors until her fingers bled. She washed toilets with her bare hands. She was forced to carry buckets of water up steep stairs again and again. If a single spot remained on the floor, she was slapped. If she cried, they laughed. One day, she mistakenly broke a glass plate. The man, her so-called owner, dragged her by the hair to the backyard, tied her to a pole, and sprayed her with cold water from a hose. Dogs are cleaner than you, he said. So, let's wash the filth off. She shivered, soaked and shaking under the water as laughter echoed around her. Her lips turned blue. Her teeth chattered. No one cared. At night, she was locked in a tiny, dark room with nothing but a thin mat and a torn blanket. The window had no view, just a wall. Sometimes she talked to herself just to stay sane. Sometimes she didn't even know what day it was. She missed her real mother. She missed her father before he died. She even missed the dirty water back home. At least no one hit her there. Her tears became her daily food. Her silence became her only friend. Brianna was alive, but barely. A week later, Brianna had barely finished mopping the long hallway, her back aching, hands swollen. When she heard the heavy sound of the front door opening, her heart skipped. Whenever that door opened, it usually meant two things, more orders or more pain. She turned slowly, cloth in hand, only to see him, her owner, walk in with two well-dressed women. They looked neat, elegant, and far too normal for a place like this. Without a smile, he pointed toward Brianna and said sharply, You? These two are your teachers. Brianna blinked, confused. My teachers? She asked in a whisper. Yes, he answered with a cold smirk. You'll be doing homeschooling starting today, every day. They come by 8 a.m. and leave by 3 p.m. sharp. Education is a must for everyone here, even for the maid. The women glanced at Brianna, clearly unsure what to make of the pale, trembling girl in front of them. Her clothes were stained, her eyes tired. She didn't look like a student. She looked like a prisoner. The man continued, voice colder than ever. Don't think for 1 second this changes your status in this house. You're still the maid. You'll still sweep, wash, scrub, clean the toilets, and obey every command without delay. Brianna swallowed hard. If your studies suffer because of chores, you'll pay for it. If your chores suffer because of your studies, you'll pay double. And if your teachers complain even once that you're lazy, slow, or distracted, he paused. Her breath caught in her chest. I will personally deal with you, and you know how it goes. The next morning, Brianna barely slept a wink. Her alarm was the angry voice of the housekeeper shouting, "Lazy bone, wake up and start scrubbing the kitchen floor before the cockroach learns how to clean." Her eyes were swollen, body weak, but she jumped up. No food, no water to bathe, just pain. By 6 a.m., she had already cleaned the toilets, swept the compound, fetched water from the outdoor tank 4 buckets, one after the other, washed the driver's dusty car, even though he didn't go anywhere. Her back was soaked in sweat. Her legs trembled like they wanted to collapse. By 7:45 a.m., the woman shouted again, "Go and sit down like a mad goat. Your teachers are almost here." Brianna ran into the small study room, still smelling of detergent, with her hair wet and clothes clinging to her skin. She tried to sit up straight, but every part of her screamed. At exactly 8 a.m., the teachers walked in. They barely greeted her before dropping thick textbooks and exercise books on the table. "We are not here to play," one of them said, flipping open a math textbook. Page 45. Begin to solve. Brianna stared at the page. Numbers danced in her eyes. She hadn't held a pencil in days. Her hands were shaking, and when she picked the pencil, it broke under her grip. The teacher frowned. "Is that how you hold a pencil? You want to fail already?" Tears welled in Brianna's eyes. She tried to speak, but her throat felt dry, like sand had taken over. The hours dragged. Math, English, science, notes upon notes, reading aloud, writing till her fingers cramped. Every time she made a mistake, the teacher banged the table. "Focus. What kind of brain do you have?" "She's too slow," the other one whispered, but loud enough for Brianna to hear. Still, she kept going. No food, no rest, not even a glass of water. By 3 p.m., the teachers stood up. "We'll be back tomorrow, and we expect improvements," one said, picking up her bag. Brianna nodded weakly, eyes hollow, her hands smudged with pencil marks and tears. As they left, the housekeeper grabbed her shirt. "Where are the plates from breakfast and lunch? Who will wash them? You think school means rest? Get up." Before she could even take a breath, she was back in the kitchen scrubbing greasy pots. Her school books were thrown carelessly on a stool near the sink. Her hand trembled as she scrubbed. Her eyes barely stayed open. That night, in her tiny room, she tried to revise, but her head dropped, and she slept off with her book still open on her knees and a soap-scented rag beside her. Brianna's first day of learning? It wasn't education. It was survival. 10 years in chains. The next day was worse. The chores doubled. The punishments increased. The lessons got tougher. That morning, Brianna was forced to wash the compound barefoot under the rain. Cold water soaked her clothes. Her teeth chattered, but nobody cared. Her teacher arrived shortly after and slammed a textbook in front of her. "Your handwriting is dirty," she barked. Brianna held the pen with shivering fingers. Her body was freezing, but her eyes stayed open. She didn't cry anymore, not because it didn't hurt, but because the tears had dried long ago. By the 3rd week, something strange began to happen. She adjusted, not because it became easier, no, but because she became stronger. Gradually, she started waking earlier, finishing her chores before anyone could complain. She studied at night, squinting under a weak bulb, silently repeating formulas and spelling words until they stuck. Sometimes she would collapse in her tiny room, but still wake up and continue. No one praised her. No one noticed. But she noticed. Her voice became clearer when reading. Her writing improved. Even the teachers, strict as they were, stopped shouting as much. One of them even raised a brow and muttered, "She's catching up." Still, she was never rewarded. She remained the maid, the house slave, the forgotten shadow in the mansion. And outside that massive gate? Nothing. She never left. Not once. 10 years. 10 years of silence, 10 years of blood, sweat, books, bruises, 10 years of no birthday, no visitors, no love, just rules, punishment, hard work, and a single question buried deep in her chest like a blade: why me? What did they see in her? Why was she the one brought here like a prisoner in chains? What exactly did her owner have in mind when he bought her from her wicked stepmother? She was now a grown woman, taller, stronger, sharper. Here's where it gets jaw-dropping. Besties, stay with Innocent Stories to see how Brianna's fate flips. But that gate still remained closed. And behind it, her freedom, her truth, her purpose. Back at Angelina's house, Angelina sat on her velvet couch, her long red nails tapping gently on her glass of chilled wine. The living room was glowing with elegance, and a giant portrait of her and Valeria on the wall screamed, "Power lives here." She took a slow sip, savoring the taste like success. Just then, the door opened, and a middle-aged man in a navy blue suit walked in, looking worn from a long day but still dignified. He adjusted his tie and gave a small bow. "Madam, I sincerely apologize. The board meeting ran longer than expected. So many things to finalize before stepping out." Angelina didn't even blink. She waved her glass airily. "Forget the apology. Sit. What matters now is preparation." The man took his seat, placing a briefcase gently on the table. Angelina leaned forward, her voice low and proud. "My baby, my queen, will turn 20 in just 7 days." She smiled as if she could already see the crown on Valeria's head. "I've made sure nothing stands in her way. She'll take over the company unopposed. I cleaned the board of anyone that would dare question her. I've worked for years strategizing, sacrificing for this very moment. My daughter will sit where no man ever thought she could." The man nodded, his voice calm but heavy with truth. "As one of the prominent trustees of the empire, consider it done, madam. The only issue we may have is if any other child of your husband shows up, but if not, she's the sole heir." Angelina raised an eyebrow and chuckled dryly. "She has no sibling. She never did. I have taken care of that a long time ago. Not one drop of competition." Just then, the door flung open. Valeria staggered in, holding a half-empty bottle of wine like it was her diploma. "Mom," she slurred, waving the bottle. "Who's this man sitting on my expensive couch, huh? Some bored rat?" She didn't wait for an answer. "Let me just warn all of you in advance. When I become CEO, I'm firing everybody. First thing, all those old cargoes on the board? Out. Gone. I want new blood, not history teachers in suits." The man's expression didn't change, but he slowly looked toward Angelina. Angelina's eyes were burning now. "Valeria," she snapped. "It's just 5 p.m., and you're drunk already? Is that how you plan to run a company? With a bottle in one hand and nonsense in your mouth?" Valeria hiccuped and flopped onto the couch, spilling a bit of wine on the rug. "I was just celebrating early, mommy." Angelina shot the man a cold, forced smile. "Don't mind her. She's just excited." The man didn't speak, but in his mind, something was off. Very off. The moment the trustee stepped out, the door barely shut behind him when Angelina turned sharply, her wineglass shaking in her hand. "You are a disgrace, Valeria," she hissed. Valeria giggled like a fool, staggering as she tried to spin around. "Oh, mommy's angry again." Then, without warning, Valeria doubled over and vomited right on the white marble floor, right in the middle of the grand living room. Angelina froze, jaw clenched. As if that wasn't enough, Valeria wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, leaned on the armrest, and flopped onto the couch like a lazy queen. "Maid," she barked suddenly. Get your useless self in here before I puke again on the piano. The maid, a skinny, tired young woman, rushed in. But even before she could bend to clean the mess, Valeria kicked the bucket toward her and screamed, "Useless rat! You can't even clean properly. I don't know why my mother hires your type. Good-for-nothing pigs." Angelina's face darkened. "Valeria," she said coldly. "That's enough." Valeria turned, wine still dripping from her hand, and glared at her mother like she was a stranger. "You think you're some goddess, don't you, Mom?" she sneered. "Always giving orders, always pretending to be perfect." Angelina's breath caught in her throat. "You should be thanking me every day," she snapped. "Everything you have is because of me. That empire, this house, your name." Valeria stood suddenly, staggering, eyes blazing. "I regret ever coming through you," she shouted. "You never gave me love, just pressure, rules, and more pressure. You wanted a puppet, not a daughter." Angelina's hand trembled as she placed her glass down. "I built everything for you," she shouted back. "I destroyed people for you." "Then maybe you shouldn't have bothered," Valeria screamed. "Maybe you should have given birth to someone else. A better version of me, right? A smarter one you can control." She grabbed the wine bottle again, raised it, and screamed, "Maybe I should just drink myself to death and save you the shame." The maid froze in the corner, unsure whether to clean or hide. Angelina's eyes welled with bitter fury. "You are ruining everything," she whispered. "Everything I sacrificed, everything I buried. If only you knew what I did to secure your place." "Don't care," Valeria cut in. "I don't want your dirty sacrifices. I want freedom." She stormed toward the stairs but slipped slightly on her own vomit. She caught herself, cursed at the maid, and stomped up with heavy feet, muttering curses that would shame a sailor. Angelina stood rooted, fists clenched. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stood there in the middle of the grand room, surrounded by gold, vomit, and silence, with one haunting thought in her heart: if only she knew what I gave up to make her queen. Back at Brianna's place, Brianna's body was tired. The stench of the gutter stung her nose. Her hands were soaked in black, smelly water as she scrubbed hard with a stiff brush. Her back bent like a worn-out branch. Just then, footsteps. She turned slowly, thinking maybe she could snatch 2 seconds of air, but no. Her owner stood there again, dressed in his usual neat suit, a wicked calm in his eyes. Behind him were 2 elegant-looking women in black heels and tight dresses. He didn't waste time. "I brought you instructors," he said. "From today, they will teach you how to catwalk." Brianna blinked. Catwalk? She was still trying to figure out what he meant when he continued with the insult. "I'm tired of watching you walk like a truck pusher. You move like a man trapped in a woman's skin. I don't want to see that nonsense anymore." She gasped and swallowed hard. Was he serious? She wanted to ask, "Why does how I walk concern you?" But before her thoughts could form words, he answered the question himself, as if he read her mind. "In 2 days, if your body still rejects the steps, if your waist still moves like it's carrying firewood, then you will have a problem with me. And I think you know what I mean by problem." The coldness in his voice made her shiver even in the hot sun. He took a slow, mocking look at her muddy hands and ruined clothes. "You've been here long enough. You know what I'm capable of, so get serious. This service is not cheap." Then he turned to the 2 instructors and said sharply, "Class begins today. 12 noon. No excuses." He didn't wait for a reply. He just walked away, his shiny shoes stepping over a puddle she was still scrubbing, like she didn't exist. Brianna looked at the women. They were already sizing her up with judgmental eyes. One of them even scoffed like she'd seen a ghost. And worst of all, she still had all the house chores to finish before 12 noon. She looked down at the dirty gutter water, her reflection barely showing, and whispered to herself, "Why am I being trained like a princess, yet treated worse than a stray dog?" But even she knew by now, questions don't bring answers in that house. They only bring punishment. So she dipped her hand back into the filth and kept scrubbing, because in that house, survival wasn't a right. It was a brutal privilege. 12 o'clock noon sharp. Brianna had barely finished rinsing the last plate before the instructors marched into the large hallway that doubled as her training ground. Her knees still ached from scrubbing the floor. Her palms were rough and peeling, but she had no excuse to give. In that house, excuses were punishable sins. The two instructors looked at her like she was a joke brought to life. Stand straight, one barked. Head up. Not like you're searching for lost coins on the floor, the other mocked. She tried. Oh, she really tried. But her body didn't understand this kind of movement. Every step felt awkward. Her legs stiff, her waist unsure, her arms like sticks by her side. They made her walk back and forth, again and again. No, no, no. You walk like you're carrying a sack of dairy on your back. Arch your back, not break it. Are you trying to seduce the devil or chase him away? The insults came like rain. Each time she stumbled, the laughter behind her grew louder. And then, in the middle of it all, he walked in. Her owner. He stood by the doorway, arms folded, eyes sharp and unreadable. The instructors quickly adjusted their postures, greeting him politely, but he ignored them. His eyes were on Brianna. She saw him, and something inside her trembled. She tried again. Slowly, carefully. Step, step, sway, trip. She landed on her knees, and the sharp pain shot through her legs. Her heel had twisted awkwardly. The room fell silent for a second. Then it came. His laugh, deep, mocking, cruel. It wasn't just a laugh. It was a message. A reminder. You look like a confused goat learning ballet, he chuckled, shaking his head. And to think someone paid to teach you. This waste of money. Brianna looked down, tears rolling freely now. Not from the pain in her leg, but from the shame burning through her. She wanted to disappear. Melt into the floor. Hide in the darkest hole possible. But no, she had to get up. She had to walk again. Because in this house, if you fall and stay down, you don't survive. A few days later, Brianna's eyes scanned the maid duty roster as usual. Morning cleaning, not her name. Laundry, not her name. Kitchen work, not her name either. Her heart skipped. She blinked and looked again. Maybe her tired eyes were playing games, but no, her name was not there. Confused, worried, and scared of being accused of negligence, she rushed to the head maid's quarters. Madam, please. I think there's a mistake. My name is missing from today's duty list. The woman lifted her head slowly, looked Brianna up and down with a strange smirk, and laughed. Not out of kindness, but that dry kind of laugh that made Brianna's skin crawl. Mistake, she said, standing up. You know, mistakes are costly in this house. Brianna's lips quivered slightly. Yes, Ma. Good. Then stop talking and go shower. You're not on duty today because the boss is taking you out. The sentence hit Brianna like thunder. Taking me out? Her eyes widened. Her breath shortened. For what? Where? Where are we going? She stammered. The chief maid raised one brow and leaned close, her voice dropping to that signature tone of mockery and mystery. You know you're not supposed to ask questions, don't you? You know the rules. She smiled, eyes cold. You've known them for 12 years. Yes. 12 years. 12 years of silence. 12 years of torture behind walls taller than her dreams. 12 years of never stepping a single foot outside the gate. Now suddenly, he was taking her out. Her hands began to shake as she turned to leave. Where were they going? Why now? And more terrifying, what if she never came back? Hours later, the car cruised silently into a majestic compound guarded by towering gates and flanked by luxury vehicles. It looked like royalty had been summoned. The entire space shimmered with wealth and power. Brianna's breath caught in her throat as she stared out the window. This was no ordinary outing. Inside the massive event hall, a sea of influential men and women mingled in designer suits and glamorous gowns. Cameras clicked. Laughter and murmurs danced across the space, and there stood Brianna in her cleaner's uniform, her face flushed with shame, standing out like a stain on white silk. She clutched her hands together tightly, trying to make herself invisible. Her heart pounded. Why did he bring me here? To mock me? Embarrass me? She kept her head down as they walked in, hearing whispers trail behind her like ghosts. Then a microphone screeched gently, and silence fell over the hall. A gray-haired man in a navy suit stepped forward, flanked by other executives on stage. The company's logo, Obioma Empire, glowed behind them in bold gold. We are gathered here today, the man began, to officially hand over the leadership of this great legacy, this empire, into the hands of its rightful heir. Claps echoed around. A few heads turned, smiling at the high table. There sat Angelina, regal and composed in emerald silk, her glass raised in triumph. Beside her, Valeria, already tipsy, beamed and whispered, "At last, I am the CEO. First thing, Mom, I'm firing all of them." Angelina chuckled, her eyes brimming with pride. The chairman continued, "After long years of legal and private investigations, we can now confirm that only one child of Mr. Maiko survived and is eligible to run this company. His blood, his legacy." Valeria rose proudly, adjusting her diamond-studded sash, preparing to walk forward. Cameras shifted toward her. A few journalists stood up to capture the moment. And so, in the absence of any opposition, the chairman declared, holding the mic with finality, "I want to gladly invite Miss Vi." "Excuse me." Brianna's owner cut in from the middle of the hall. Every head turned. With calm, calculated poise, he stepped forward and spoke louder this time. Mr. Maiko Bioma had another child, his very first, from his first wife. Her name is Brianna. Silence. Then chaos. Gasps, murmurs, screams. The press exploded with flashing lights and shouting questions. Angelina stood up so quickly her chair screeched back and fell. "What nonsense is this?" Valeria staggered forward, her wine glass crashing to the floor. "What did you say?" Her voice cracked. The chairman looked stunned, the microphone dangling in his hand. People turned toward Brianna. The girl in the cleaner's gown, confused, nervous, silent, but standing. Angelina's voice boomed across the room. "You're lying. This is sabotage. This is madness. There is no other child." But Brianna's owner stepped forward again, holding up a brown envelope. "DNA test results, legal documents, proof of paternity, all here, all valid." The room rippled with shock. Valeria's hands shook as she grabbed the edge of the high table. "I've waited for this all my life. No one is taking this from me, especially not some maid." The room stared in stunned silence, but Brianna, trembling, eyes wide. The hall fell into stunned silence. All eyes were glued to the two young women standing side by side on the stage. Brianna in a cleaner's uniform, yet radiating quiet confidence, and Valeria in a shimmering designer gown with arrogance spilling from her every gesture. The chairman adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Now that the claim has been challenged and the bloodline confirmed," he said with authority, "we must follow the terms laid down by the late Mr. Maiko Bioma. His instructions are clear." He looked to the audience. "In the event of multiple heirs, the company, wealth, and all properties shall go to whoever can find a singular key hidden in the abandoned store. That key unlocks a safe. Inside it lies the documents to all my properties, and whoever finds it becomes the next CEO." Gasps swept the crowd. Valeria's mouth dropped open. "A store? Like a dirty warehouse? This is madness." Brianna remained calm, her hands gently folded in front of her. The same calmness that had gotten her through 12 years of torment in that house. Angelina stomped forward, livid. "That man is unbelievable. Even in death, he plays games. A whole empire hanging on a silly key." She turned to the chairman, stabbing the air with her finger. "Take my daughter to that store. She'll find your key and end this drama once and for all." But the chairman raised a firm hand. Both daughters will go at the same time. That was the condition. Angelina's jaw tightened, but she said nothing more. Valeria turned to Brianna and scoffed. Well, don't get in my way, and don't cry when I find the key first. A maid can never rule an empire. Brianna simply smiled again. We'll see, Valeria. Minutes later, the convoy of black SUVs pulled up in front of an eerie, locked-up storehouse located behind the main mansion. The building was old, with vines creeping up its cracked walls. A heavy padlock guarded the door. The lawyer stepped forward and unlocked it with a rusty key. This place was your father's first shop, he said. Where the Obioma legacy began. It hasn't been touched in over 20 years. The door creaked open, revealing a large, dim space filled with dust, cobwebs, overturned crates, and forgotten memories. The lawyer handed each girl a flashlight. You both have 1 hour. The clock starts now. Whoever finds the key first wins everything. Valeria took off in a huff, muttering curses as she tiptoed around the grime in disgust. Brianna took a deep breath and stepped in quietly, her eyes scanning the room with sharp curiosity, her heart beating steadily. Back at the hall, reporters swarmed around Angelina. Ma, what happens if neither of them finds the key? One asked. Angelina snapped, don't be ridiculous. My daughter will find it. She must find it. That key belongs to her. Angelina turned slowly to find the screen showing the girls moving inside the dusty store. Who will find the key? Who will earn the empire? Who will lose everything? The battle had just begun. Inside the store, dust danced in the air like forgotten secrets as Brianna moved calmly through the dim space. Her flashlight swept over rusty shelves and broken wooden crates. She wasn't in a hurry. She was focused. Her mind replayed her owner's words, when you don't give up on life, life gives you what you demand of it. Just then, a loud bang behind her shattered the silence. I'm done with this rubbish. Valeria's voice echoed through the store like a spoiled hurricane. She stormed toward Brianna, her heels clicking against the concrete. She pointed a shaking, manicured finger. You think you're smart? You think you'll win this? We're leaving, both of us. We'll tell them the key doesn't exist. And you'll also tell them you're not my sister. You're not even legally born. I'm sure you probably came from a gutter. Brianna didn't flinch, didn't turn, didn't speak. She calmly opened a dusty toolbox, scanning it. Not even a side glance. Valeria stood there, stunned. Are you ignoring me? I'm talking to you, cockroach. No response. Her eye twitched. She screamed, flung her flashlight, and stormed out, fuming like a mad princess in a fairy tale gone wrong. Outside, Valeria burst through the store doors, dragging her gown like a war banner. Her perfectly curled hair stuck to her sweaty forehead. She looked around at the stunned guests, then charged towards the chairman and the lawyer, wielding a thick iron pipe she picked from the store. Where's the stupid key? She bellowed. Tell me now, or I'll smash someone's kneecaps. Do I look like I belong in a dusty zoo? I'm a CEO, not a street rat. Gasps filled the air. One board member ducked behind his chair. Another woman whispered, "Is she okay?" A reporter zoomed in, mouth agape. We are live here at the Obioma Legacy event, where chaos has erupted. Angelina, sipping champagne, smirked like a villain in a telenovela. My child is bold and smart, she purred. Let's see how this goes. But the chairman stood calmly and signaled to 2 security men. Please relieve her of the pipe before we all end up in the ER. Valeria resisted until one of her heels broke. She stumbled, screamed, and finally collapsed into a chair, muttering, I need to speak to my therapist. Back inside the store, Brianna, now deeper in the room, reached a small, dusty frame nailed to the wall. A faded picture of a younger Mr. Obioma stood behind cracked glass. She paused, staring at it. Something about the man's smile seemed to speak to her. She gently pulled the frame. Click. The sound made her heart stop. Behind the photo was a tiny hole carved into the wall, and inside it, a small vintage brass key. She held it up, trembling slightly. Tears welled in her eyes, not from the dust, but from the weight of everything. Years of being treated like a nobody, and now holding the key to everything. Outside, everyone turned as the store door creaked open. There she was, Brianna, still in her cleaner's uniform, smudged with dirt, but holding the key up high like a golden trophy. Dead silence, one clap, then another, and then a loud round of applause mixed with gasps and whispers. Angelina's glass dropped from her hand. Valeria looked like she had been hit by a train twice. No. The chairman walked over slowly, smiling, and took the key with reverence. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, lifting Brianna's hand. Meet the new CEO of the Obioma Empire, Miss Brianna Obi. Just then, as the applause for Brianna echoed through the hall, a familiar yet mysterious figure walked up to the stage, calm, composed, and carrying years of secrets on his shoulders. Brianna's eyes widened slightly. Her owner, the man who made her scrub floors till her hands bled, who let her go hungry, who never showed an ounce of warmth. What was he doing? He took the microphone. The crowd quieted instantly. Before this celebration continues, he said in a calm but commanding voice, I would like to steal a moment to talk about myself and, more importantly, the man whose legacy we're here to honor. All eyes turned. He inhaled, his eyes misty. Before Mike Obioma died, at least 4 years before his death, we were in Paris for a business meeting. I remember the night clearly. After dinner in his hotel room, he opened up to me. For the first time, I saw the broken child behind the billionaire. The room grew still. He told me his mother died when he was just 2 months old. And a year later, his father married another woman. That woman, his stepmother, became the devil in their home. She poisoned his father and turned him into a goat. Murmurs of disbelief spread across the hall. A few gasps. A woman dropped her clutch. Yes, a goat, he said, nodding seriously. Mike watched in horror. No one believed him. And when he was just 10 years old, he was sent out of the house in the middle of the night, alone. He paused. Do you know what it means to sleep under bridges as a child, to survive on crumbs, to beg for food? He fought through the streets with nothing but his will to survive. He told me that suffering carved out the lion in him. He turned slowly to Brianna, his voice catching slightly. Then Mike Obioma shared something deeper. How his first wife died mysteriously after childbirth, and how he married the nurse that had cared so well for his newborn daughter, Brianna. People gasped again, all eyes now bouncing between Brianna, Valeria, and Angelina. At first, he continued, Mike Obioma believed he had made the right choice, but things changed. The nurse became cold, controlling, and when she gave birth to her own daughter, Valeria, everything got worse. He looked directly at Angelina, whose face was frozen in fear and rage. Mike became afraid. He knew his time was short. He knew he could be poisoned or worse. So, he made me swear a vow, a painful vow. His voice trembled now. He begged me, take my daughter away. Hide her from the world. Let her suffer. Let her know what hunger is. Let her taste pain, regret, bitterness, and hardship. Let her feel abandoned, but never tell her who she is until it is time. The hall went silent. I asked him why. Why punish an innocent girl? And he said, because if life ever tries to destroy her, she must already know how to survive. If they take away her throne, she must know how to build her own empire. If the world turns against her, she must not beg. It must beg her. He turned back to Brianna, his voice cracking now. And so I became your cruel teacher. I was the monster he asked me to be, but only because he knew this day would come, and when it did, you would be ready. A moment of stunned silence. Then someone stood and began to clap. Another followed. Soon a thunderous ovation swept through the hall. People stood, some with tears, some with clenched fists in the air, some embracing the stranger beside them. All eyes turned to Angelina, who was visibly shaking now. But the man, Brianna's owner, wasn't done. He turned slowly toward her, his voice icy yet calm, dripping with revelation. Angelina, he began, walking toward her step by step. Do you remember the day I came to your house and asked if you were willing to sell one of your daughters to me? Angelina, still seated, froze. Her lips quivered, but she couldn't speak. The man continued, you didn't even hesitate. You offered to sell Brianna like she was a broken piece of furniture. I told you I needed a girl that would forever be with me as a wife or maid. You nodded, smiled, and without blinking, you said, take this one. She's useless anyway. A wave of murmurs ran through the hall like thunder. You knew she was your husband's first daughter. You knew she was legally the heir to everything Michael Obioma owned. And yet, he paused, glaring, you had turned her into a maid in her own house. You starved her, denied her education, and made her wash Valeria's panties. The crowd gasped again. One woman shouted, this is wickedness. The man took a step closer, his voice now louder. You told me to take her far away. You said, and I quote, she should never return. Let her forget she ever belonged to a family. Angelina stood suddenly, screaming, lies. He's lying. I didn't say that. But the man raised his hand, silencing her. I paid you handsomely, exactly what you requested, but what you didn't know, he turned to the crowd, is that I am not a stranger. I was given that assignment by your own husband, Mike Obioma himself. The room erupted. Chairs moved. Phones came out. Journalists were typing like crazy. Brianna stood frozen, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. Her heart pounding against her chest, not out of fear, but from the weight of a truth she never saw coming. Then her owner, the man she had called master for years, slowly approached her. No longer with the presence of a master, but with the humility of a servant. He leaned closer, placed his hand gently on her shoulder, and whispered just loud enough for the front row to hear, you have made your father proud. Very proud. Then, with everyone watching, he bowed deeply before her. I am not your boss, Brianna. Never was I. I served your father as one of his most trusted bodyguards. He assigned you to me, not because he wanted you hidden, but because he wanted you hardened, sharpened, polished for the crown you wear today. A gasp swept through the hall. And if you are willing, he raised his eyes to hers, I will serve you with total honesty and loyalty for the rest of my days. Everyone in that mansion where you suffered, every maid, guard, cook, they are now your subordinates. We were hired to serve you. You, Miss Brianna, are the true boss now. He stood tall and added with dignity, my name is Marcus Doravan. Congratulations, my boss. The crowd erupted with cheers. Marcus Doravan, a man of honor. Integrity still lives. But Brianna was trembling, trying to speak, but too overwhelmed. Her eyes overflowed with gratitude, pain, and deep relief. Suddenly, she ran into his arms and hugged him tightly. The hall melted into applause and emotion. In a low whisper, she said into his chest, Sir, you raised me. You disciplined me. You protected me when no one else would. You gave me nothing, yet prepared me for everything. You don't belong in the low places anymore. She pulled back slightly and looked into his eyes, smiling through her tears. Never. Thank you, boss. My owner, my family. Marcus smiled back, eyes glossy with tears, and nodded. Just then, Angelina let out a sharp, choking gasp and collapsed on the floor. Someone shouted, water. Get water. Meanwhile, Valeria, shaking like a leaf, looked up at the ceiling, then down at the floor, then finally at the man. Tears rushed down her cheeks, then burst into louder tears. Angelina was being lifted by security and medics. The chair she had once sat on so regally now empty. The crowd stood in stunned awe as the chairman returned to the stage and declared, let this be a reminder to all, destiny delayed is never destiny denied. So, ladies and gentlemen, the past has spoken. Let the future begin. Today, the true heir takes her throne. The lights shifted. The anthem of the company played. A crown was brought forth. Brianna took her first steps as CEO. And as the spotlight shone brighter on Brianna, it wasn't just on a new CEO. It was on a phoenix rising. Hello, besties. Wow, what a journey, right? From pain to power, from maid to CEO. Brianna's story reminds us that your beginnings don't define your destination. Hardship is not the end. It can be the preparation for greatness. Here at Innocent Stories, we bring you stories that inspire and uplift. Moral lessons: Number 1, treat people with kindness. You never know who they truly are. Number 2, don't look down on anyone. Tables can turn in just one moment. Number 3, sometimes those who hurt you are actually pushing you into purpose. Number 4, and most importantly, suffering is never wasted if you keep pushing. Thank you all so much for watching and staying till the end with Innocent Stories. Your support means everything. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs a little hope and inspiration today. I love you all so much, and from the bottom of my heart, God bless you all richly. See you in the next episode, besties.